Thanks for everyone coming back for the second part of our seminar series today. My name's Steve Chilrud. I'm one of the research investigators as part of the Columbia Superfund Research Program and part of the team that focuses on research translation. And our next speaker is someone that we've been working very closely on research translation issues over more than a decade, Stephen Spayd, who comes from the New Jersey Geological and Water Survey. Steve is a unique individual, I believe. He is not only has a degrees in geology, but also including a PhD from Rutgers, but also an MPH. And so he fits very well as one of the people who oversees the management of resources dealing with arsenic and groundwater. Today he's going to speak about innovative private well testing and water treatment for arsenic, boron, and radionuclides, all geogenic issues that plague parts of New Jersey. Thank you, Steve.
All right, thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me, and thanks for coming out. I've learned a lot from these seminars for more years than I can't remember when I first started coming to these seminars and then listening to them online. So it's been great, and it's great to have a chance to present some of the work I've been doing back to you guys. First question I have is, did anyone see the new movie Dark Waters? Not yet? Okay, you got to go see it. So, well, I guess this isn't it's not going to ruin the movie. But my presentation will show you that you do not need to live next door to the DuPont hazardous waste landfill to get a contaminated well that could affect your health. And as Steve said, I'm going to talk about the naturally occurring arsenic, boron, and radionuclides. So throw some new contaminants in for you guys to look at. Just some disclosures. The views I'm going to express are my own, not DEP. Mention of trade names is not an endorsement, and I have no financial interest in what I'm going to present. So in New Jersey, we have about 1 million people using 400,000 private wells, and it's hard to believe in a state that's so densely populated. 6 states have less than 1 million people. So we have more than the number of people in a whole state we have on private wells in New Jersey. We also have the New Jersey Private Well Testing Act, which is a fantastic law that requires testing of a private well when you sell a house, or if you are renting rooms in the house or it's an apartment, you have to test the water once every 5 years. So far, we've tested about 150,000 wells, which is an unbelievable number of wells tested for a long list of contaminants, which includes arsenic. However, we still have 250,000 wells that we haven't tested yet. And that's 63%. So we've got still a lot to do, and one of the ways we've been filling that gap is with outreach projects, reaching out to people whose wells are particularly vulnerable for one or more contaminants. What we're trying to do with these outreach events is overcome the barriers to testing. So the number one barrier is they don't know who, what, where, when, why, or how to test their water. They don't have time, and they're afraid of the cost, or they think it's too expensive. In addition to getting over those barriers, we're trying to protect the public health of those 1 million people, and also gain knowledge about where the contaminants are, so we can guide future efforts. Here's the data through 2014, and what I want you to notice is we're showing percent tested that failed. So the 2 number 1 contaminants that are showing the highest prevalence are gross alpha, which is a measure of radioactivity in the water, at 10%, and arsenic in second place at 9%. The man-made contaminants are much lower, less than 3%. So The naturally occurring contaminants are 3 times more prevalent than the man-made. Geology is a key factor. On the left here, I'm showing a geologic map of New Jersey, and on the right, a map of pH in groundwater. And you can see as the geologic, each color is a different geologic formation. You see the pH changing. Red is really low pH, blue high pH, and you just see it vacillating to the different formations. Here are the results for arsenic. And we have a great website. The link will come up in a couple of slides. You can look at it by county. And here you can see these dark blue counties. The arsenic exceeding the MCL there is between 10 and 20%. Up here in Bergen County, closer to where we are, maybe some of you commute, between 5 and 10%, exceeding the standard for private wells. We can zoom in to the municipality level. And so if you're from Bergen County, you can see here's Upper Saddle River and Saddle River, Franklin Lakes issues. But our biggest, our worst area is down in Hunterdon, Mercer, and Somerset counties. You can see these darker colored counties, like these towns here, are between 40 and 60% of the tested wells failing. We then can zoom into 2-mile by 2-mile grids and see exactly where the problems are. This is as far as we wanted to zoom in to protect the privacy of the well owners, which is a requirement of our testing law. You can zoom in though on one of the 2-mile grids and click on it, and in this case, in this 2-mile grid, we have 71 wells sampled and 64.8% failing for arsenic. So it shows the problem. And here's the website at the bottom here to jump you right into this mapping. So the first project I'm going to talk about is an outreach we did through school systems. We had done this once earlier back in 2009. The 2 towns were selected because they're in a high arsenic area. They're right in that area I was just showing you. They're 100% private well use. We had interest in the community. The environmental commissions wanted to do more outreach in their town. And we came up with the idea of doing it through the schools. And the school boards were contacted and got on board. We tested for both arsenic and boron in this study. The U.S. Geological Survey had found naturally occurring boron associated with arsenic in the same geologic formations, but in Pennsylvania. And we started testing for boron at our high arsenic wells, and once in a while we would find a hit. In this particular case, one of the families from the 2009 study had some health issues and had some hair testing done and had high arsenic and boron in their hair. And so that we then tested their water and found both high arsenic and boron. So here I'm just clicking on the towns, the 2 towns we looked at. This one has 529 wells sampled for arsenic, 24% failing. And the other town had 425 wells tested with 42% failing. There's the other contaminants are listed here. You can see, like in this town, gross alpha also is exceeding in 8.5% of the wells. So you can have arsenic and radionuclides in your water. So very often, arsenic will show up with other contaminants. Iron and manganese are very common. The radioactive elements, uranium, radium, and radon, also common, and then boron. So why look at boron? At about 1 part per million, boron is toxic to certain plants. If you irrigate the plants with that water, they die. And we have cases of that in New Jersey, which I'll show you. Boron kills ants. But closer to home in mammals, the main thing is that boron's toxic to the male reproductive system, mice, rats, and dogs. So here's a list of some health effects in dogs, rats, and mice. The The US EPA back in 2008 determined not to regulate boron in public water at the national level because of the prevalence was not that high. They recommended that states look at their states, and if the state has a problem, then the state's going to have to deal with it themselves. So arsenic and boron in well water, colorless, odorless, tasteless. The only way to know is to test. Here's the hair analysis of that one well owner, and you can see the arsenic is above the 95th percentile, pegged out there in his hair, and also sodium, boron, lithium, and strontium, all very high, above 97th percentile in his hair. So when I met with him and he showed me this data, I said, okay, I'm going to test your water for these things. And lo and behold, here's his water test analysis: arsenic at 68 micrograms per liter, boron at 18,000 micrograms per liter. EPA has a health advisory of 2,000 micrograms per liter, so he was 9 times that for boron. Lithium at 700, no standards for lithium, but in previous testing that we've done, we never saw any lithium above 100, and here we were seeing 700. High sodium and also high strontium, twice the health advisory for strontium. All of this in his hair and water, and no testosterone in his circulation, which was, we don't know if it's from the water, but when he moved into the house, his wife was pregnant with their 3rd child, and 6 months later, he lost his testosterone. So it could be related. One of the things we did is everyone in the town, in 2 towns, is on well water, so we thought, let's do a lecture to the school, to 6th, 7th, and 8th grades on well water. Where does well water come from? What do you need to do to protect it? And that you need to test. And we also talked about the arsenic and the boron. What we did was we sent every student home, kindergarten through 8th grade, with a bottle with this flyer attached to it for a free water test. So what we're trying to do here is overcome the barriers. You don't have to know anything. Your student is, you just have to find it in the backpack, right? There's a bottle with a flyer, maybe open it up, fill the bottle at the kitchen sink, and send it back in with the child. Very easy instructions, all samples from the kitchen tap. Run the water for 10 minutes, put your name and address on the label, fill the bottle, and send it back in. We were able to collect 428 samples in 1 week. We did get some duplicates because, you know, there's a 6th grader and a 3rd grader. And we analyzed all the samples. We thought that would be good quality control. Does the 6th grader and the 3rd grade sample match? And they did. We also got 7 bottles back with no name or address. So you're dealing with children. This is what can happen. Yeah. In the end, so it added up to 376 individual homes that we were able to test in 1 week. Here I'm presenting the data on top of a geologic map. So the background, every different color is a different geologic formation. Green is, this is arsenic, green is below our MCL of 5 micrograms per liter, and pink is above. What we found is very interesting geologically. In the Precambrian area, which are metamorphic rocks, gneiss mostly, no arsenic. In this area where there's sandstone and conglomerate, again, no arsenic exceeding the standard. And down here in the mudstones and shales, this is where we're finding all the arsenic. Here's a graph. Luckily, 110 wells were non-detect. That was great, less than 0.5. 182 wells between the detection and 5 micrograms per liter. And then 93 wells, 34% of the samples exceeding the drinking water standard, with the highest above 60. Another interesting fact was 50 of the homes reported having arsenic water treatment, and 11 of those homes, 22%, were failing at the kitchen sink. So they either had improper treatment or they weren't maintaining their treatment. Here's the boron data. Again, no boron up in the Precambrian or in the sandstone conglomerate, and the boron was even more limited to this area inside this syncline. So it's obviously related to the geology where the boron is. Overall, the exceedance rate was 5%, and in the red circle, the exceedance was 16%. If we zoom out, you can see the green, and this is the boron data. The yellow is between 1,000 and 2,000 micrograms per liter. The boron health advisory has bounced around quite a bit. Not too long ago, it was 500 micrograms per liter. Then it went up to 1,000 and then 2,000. I can't tell you exactly why. More data looking at some of the factors. But you see the area that we found that was really hot there. I want to point out a couple other areas down here adjacent to diabase. The red colored formations are an igneous intrusion, and we see some high boron there. Out here to the east, there's some irrigation wells. In the middle of the basin, this is the Newark Basin, where the operators found they were killing plants and tracked it back to their well. If your irrigation well is killing plants, one of the first things you'll test for is boron. And then to the west, I circled the Salford Quarry there, which is a Superfund site, and they have a boron problem there. And if you follow the geologic formation from the Superfund site all the way up to our area, they're in the same geologic formation. So probably the boron at their site is not from the waste, but from the geologic formation. So I'm going to get into treatment a little bit. What doesn't work for arsenic? Water softeners don't work. Granular activated carbon doesn't work. Brita filters don't work. They're just carbon filters. Magnets don't work. The owner of the PowerMax magnet company came to us and said, "My magnets remove arsenic." I made the mistake of entertaining him and said, "Okay, we'll try it. We have wells, let's try it." So we put it on. This is the magnets attached to the pipe. The water coming in was 35 micrograms per liter, and the water coming out was also 35. He complained that we obviously didn't wait long enough. I said, "Well, how long do we have to wait?" He said, "At least a couple of weeks." So we went on for 3 months, and we didn't see any improvement. He then accused me of fudging the data to make his magnets look bad. So what are the major factors in arsenic water treatment? The most important one is the species. Do you have arsenic 3 or arsenic 5? Arsenic 3 is very difficult to treat. It has no charge. The arsenic 5 is an anion, makes it much easier to remove. pH, the pH of the water. Arsenic does not like to be removed if pH is above 8. And then co-contaminants can be a problem. The formula for success is convert arsenic 3 to 5 if needed with oxidants. That could be chlorine, ozone, UV. It can be just air. Adjust the pH and then deal with the co-contaminants. So how do you determine the arsenic species? It's the availability at the commercial labs is limited. So we came up with a rule of thumb in New Jersey based on our data. If the dissolved iron was elevated above 100 micrograms per liter, or the manganese was elevated, and or you had sulfur odor, that would indicate a high percentage of the arsenic being arsenic 3. And the more, like if you have 2 of these or 3 of these, if you have all 3 of these, you've got arsenic 3. Another way to do it, though, is with these arsenic speciation cartridges. The cartridges remove only arsenic 5. So what you do is you collect 2 samples. You fill 1 bottle. This is your raw water sample. You're going to send it to the lab for total arsenic. Second sample, you draw up in a syringe, pass it through the arsenic speciation cartridge into a bottle, and all the arsenic 5 is out, so the only thing in the bottle is the arsenic 3. You send it to the lab for total arsenic analysis, and now you have both your total arsenic, your arsenic 3, and you can subtract and get your arsenic 5. this works fairly well. Just another note on the pH. So you want to get the pH less than 8. A lot of our wells are in the range of 8 to 10. So we recommend anion exchange, which will reduce the pH about 2 units. That's going to take out the bicarbonate and get the pH down. The anion exchange will also remove the arsenic if it's in the arsenic 5 form. So reverse osmosis works, but again, only for arsenic 5. Anion exchange, only arsenic 5, that's the anion. We don't recommend anion, it works, but we don't recommend it because the salt tank needs to be maintained. So it regenerates the media with chlorides from brine solution. When we go into homes that have either anion exchange or cation exchange, 50% of the time, there's no salt in the salt tank. If there's no salt in the salt tank, it's not going to work. And that's fine if you're using a water softener to remove hardness. You can feel the hardness in the water when the water's hard. But when the arsenic is coming through, you can't, there's no way to know. And if you have high sulfate or nitrate, whatever, if you have a lot of anions in the water, they'll knock the arsenic off of that resin once the resin is reaching saturation. Adsorption media is the best. It's great for arsenic 5, not so good for arsenic 3. Iron media, titanium, and then iron impregnated resins work well. Just some pictures of point of use treatment. On the left here is a reverse osmosis system, just 3 small cartridges. You'll get water at a small tap at the kitchen sink, and on the right, adsorption cartridges that you can put under the sink. But we believe whole house water treatment is better than point of use. 2 studies showed that continued arsenic exposure was found in families relying on point of use treatment or relying on bottled water. One in Maine by Andy Smith and a study I did in New Jersey. So what does it look like? An anion exchange system looks just like a water softener. You got a tank with resin and a salt tank. Just kind of repeating some stuff there. The anion exchange will take out the bicarbonate, and so it's going to reduce the pH about 2 units. And if you're starting at 7 and now you've dropped the pH down to 5, you need to put a neutralizer in to get the pH back up, so you're not, so the water doesn't leach from things from the plumbing. This is what a whole house treatment system looks like. We recommend 2 tanks. A worker tank followed by a safety tank. We recommend a pre-filter for sediment coming up from the well, and then a post-filter to prevent any of the treatment media from getting into the drinking water. We've seen this happen. We've seen basically every type of treatment media you can think of actually getting into the drinking water. So it wouldn't be good if you adsorb the arsenic onto the media, then the media breaks down to small pieces, and then you drink it with your cup of coffee or your dinner. This is what a system looks like in someone's finished basement, and in New Jersey the cost is about $3,000 for the whole house treatment system. We have this New Jersey Arsenic Awareness website, which we couldn't have done without Barnard College and you guys working on this. It's a great website, and what I like most about it are the frequently asked questions, all about arsenic and health effects, water treatment. When I get a phone call, I can send them to the website and say, check the website, and then if you still have questions, get back to me, and it's cut down my phone time dramatically. This is what it looks like in our geologic formations. Here's some gray shale at the top. It looks like gold in there. That's fool's gold, also known as pyrite. When you zoom in and take an analysis for the arsenic in those crystals, it can be up to 15,000 ppm in the pyrite crystal. When exposed to air and water, it's going to weather and dissolve into the water. Water treatment for boron is extremely difficult because boron is, first, it's a very small molecule and it has no charge at the pHs we find in our well water. So we decided to look for the source of the boron in the wells so we could maybe seal off those zones. And what I'm showing here is we do geophysical logging of the wells. This is a 360-degree camera taking picture of the inside of the well bore. The orangish color here are our red mudstones and siltstones. The black and gray would be reduced layers of black shale. And here you can see, here's a conglomerate. This would mean most of these were deposited in a lake. So here we have a stream bed that was flowing in the area and left behind sand and gravel. So based on the geophysical work, we can go into the well, and what we want to do is put a balloon in the well. So we can deflate the balloon, drop it down the well to the appropriate depth, and then inflate it from the surface. Test the water below the balloon and above the balloon and see, and you move the balloon around and try to find where you can block off the layer. So here's an example of one of the cases we did. First, we put the balloon here, and we had the pump below, we had bad water. So we reversed it, put the pump above, we got good water. Now we wanted to know, well, how deep can we move the balloon to? So we moved it lower, and lower was not good. Even lower was worse, and we moved it back up here and had good water. And then we eventually grouted the well up to this level, and they now have perfectly fine water. Here's the water from the deep zone. You can see the arsenic at 57, the boron at 9,000, lithium, strontium, sodium, sulfate, hardness, total dissolved solids very high. Everything in red is bad. After we grouted the well, everything's in green, good. The only thing that was still a problem was the arsenic was still at 9 micrograms per liter. But that's much better than 57. And if they do put treatment in, the treatment's going to last much longer. So it's going to be cost effective. Here's another well we did. This well had didn't have arsenic was not a problem. It had boron. It had other issues, calcification issues, because it's a deep confined aquifer. Notice it has basically no hardness in the water. This is because the calcium carbonate is coming into the well under pressure and would precipitate in the well and in their plumbing. Their plumbing was totally filled with minerals. So we found the zone, isolated it, and now this is the resulting water, all good. So this type of work can be done. I'm going to pop through a couple other outreach events. This is the one done by you guys with Hunterdon Healthcare. It's out in our, in our biggest problem area with these clinics, giving out free samples through the health clinics. There's the poster in the waiting room, the flyer, and here's me and Stuart Brayman celebrating the billboard along the side of the highway, which was done at the same time. Here's another one done in collaboration with Columbia and the county health department in Warren County, which is in North Jersey. Here we sent this a letter and the flyer to neighbors of high arsenic wells. So we discovered the neighbors through the Private Well Testing Act and sent them letters. We mailed out the flyers to 1,100 homes within 2,000 feet of the high wells. We got 376 samples back, 32%, not bad. And only 5.3% were failing. And it's weird when I say only 5% are failing. Normally, when something's failing for 5% in people's drinking water, it's a huge deal. But with arsenic, we've gotten used to high numbers. I'm going to shift gears into radioactive elements. Why are we concerned? Well, they're all carcinogens. Radium increases the risk of bone cancer, sinus cancer, and leukemia. It behaves like calcium, so it gets planted into your bones, and the half-life is 1,600 years. So it's going to radiate you from the inside, hence the bone and the blood cancers. Radon, inhaling radon, of course, is going to increase your risk of lung cancer, and ingesting it, stomach cancer. Uranium, also a carcinogen, but also toxic to the kidney. I'm going to give you guys a basic primer here on radiation. I don't know if you need it, but I'll do it anyway. So alpha particles, we have an alpha source here. This is an alpha detector. You're going to hear a sound, maybe, if it works. And you'll see the needle on the meter go up. Alpha particles do not go through paper. So notice when he puts the paper in there, the alphas stop. So they don't go through paper, but they may be damaging the paper. And so alphas are a problem when ingested. Beta particles, they do go through paper. Okay, the beta source. But they don't go through plexiglass. Gamma source here. And the gamma rays go right through everything. Basically, it goes through the plexiglass. And here's a lead brick. The lead brick slows down the gammas. Why is he wearing a glove on this one? Because he's holding the lead brick, not for the gamma rays. So the goal for all these contaminants is 0 because they're carcinogens. Gross alpha, it's called gross because it counts the alphas that come out of the sample. It doesn't tell you if they're from radium, uranium, or what, it's just the number of alphas that are coming out. The standard is 15 picocuries per liter. In New Jersey, we have wells so far, we found up to 2,000 picocuries per liter. Huge, huge numbers. The individual elements, there's a standard for radium-226 plus 228 of 5 picocuries per liter. So far, we have wells up to 400. Uranium, 30 micrograms per liter, and we have wells up to 1,200, so 40 times the standard. For radon, EPA has been looking at making a standard somewhere between 300 and 4,000 picocuries per liter. New Jersey, we do not have a standard, but our Drinking Water Quality Institute, which is charged with coming up with recommended standards, has recommended 800 picocuries per liter. We have wells up to 200,000 picocuries per liter radon, so huge numbers. Here's one outreach we did. Here's the flyer. It was announced at a township committee meeting. This is in North Jersey. The committee meetings are covered by the local newspaper, so it's a good way to get in the paper. We also, the flyer was posted on the town website, and then flyers distributed at the local post offices. They had like 5 post offices in this town, and then also flyers at daycare centers. We got 89 samples, and we found problems. Gross alpha exceeded in 30% of the wells. This is where we set a new record. We got a 2,000. Uranium failed in 14% of the wells. Gross beta, which has a standard, failed in 3%. Radium, 5%. Radon in water above our recommended MCL was exceeded in 83% of the wells. We also tested radon in air and exceeded the guideline there, 43% of the wells. And not to leave out arsenic. Arsenic failed in 6% of the wells over here, which looks minor compared to the radiation in that town. Quickly, here's a map, a geologic map. The black lines are the faults. Each different color is a different geologic formation. It's highly variable here. The red squares are failing for gross alpha. We noticed that in this fault zone, it's the worst area in this town. So clearly geology plays a huge role. There's the uranium also in that fault zone, the radium in that fault zone. The radon in water was basically everywhere though. And so was the radon in air. So I can't explain those yet. Here's another one we did in South Jersey. This is in Salem County, the far south, where radium is a huge problem in the water. It's very low pH water. So here we had a flyer distributed, Facebook posts, an online sign up. Here's the town. In the Private Well Testing Act, the gross alpha was failing in about 35% of the wells, 729 wells tested. We also tested for nitrate and bacteria, which are also problems in this area. People signed up. They got an email to schedule with the lab. We had a certified lab go out and collect the samples because the samples have to be analyzed within 48 hours. So you can't do a mailing for that. Gross alpha in the raw water was failing in 74% of the samples. Most of the people had treatment. Water softener removes radium. A lot of people have water softeners here due to the high iron in the water. And so only 5% were failing in the treated water. The highest gross alpha was 92, the standard 15. Nitrate, 13% were failing. Most of the people had nitrate treatment. Only 1% of the treated water was failing. The highest was 23. This is an issue for blue baby syndrome. It's a highly agricultural area, and most of the nitrate is probably from agriculture. Currently, we're doing a study on outreach to neighbors of the highest gross alphas in our Private Well Testing Act. The range of the high ones is 138 to 1500. We're sending out letters to the neighbors. So far, we sent out 300 letters. We're hoping to get the first 75, first come, first serve. We're going to test the water for gross alpha, uranium, radium, radon, and iron. Just to give you a feel, here's our Private Well Testing Act data on gross alpha in South Jersey. In this square here, 105 wells were tested, 2-mile grid, right, 73% failing. The red circles here are where the highest ones are in New Jersey, but we don't have any data studied yet for these northern counties up here. Just started in 2018 for gross alpha, so we don't have the data. It will be hot up there. New Jersey happens to be a naturally radioactive state. What about treatment for radioactive? Radium, as I said, is very easy. A water softener takes it out, and the cost is about $1,500. Reverse osmosis will take it out at point of use. Uranium is also removed by anion. It's an anion removed by anion exchange, costs about $2,000. RO will also take it out. Radon can be removed with granular activated carbon if it's under 4,000, but above 4,000 you need to use aeration. Otherwise, the carbon gets too radioactive. The half-life for radon is very short, 3.5 days. So it's breaking down, it's doing a lot of decays, and so there's a lot of gamma rays shooting out. And then if you have radon in air, a whole house mitigation system is only about 2,000. So here's what a water softener looks like. Anyone listening out there who installs water treatment, please label the tanks so we know what they are. Why does a water softener work? Well, radium is a cation, and it is in the same column with calcium and magnesium, right? So they're in the same column, they behave the same way. Here's an anion resin tank, and you can see it looks just like the water softener, hence the need for labeling. And a reminder that it lowers the pH by 2 points, and you may need a neutralizer. Carbon tank on the left for moderate levels of radon, and then an aeration system for radon above 4,000. What's wrong with this picture? Here's a basement partially finished. On the left we have a granular activated carbon tank for radon removal, and it's too close to the living area. The radon in this water is around 5,000 picocuries per liter, and when you sit on the couch over here, you're getting zapped with gamma rays. And you can see the big screen TV just behind the wall here. You can measure this with what's called a micro-R meter. So if you do any work with radiation, this gadget will measure the gamma rays, and I'm going to show you a video of what some radioactive water treatment tanks look like. This is a well with high arsenic and radioactive. Okay. Sorry about that.
Radioactive, and hence we're getting some very high readings on the tank here. You see it's reading about right there about 90 microwatt per hour. If we come back here, you can see the meter pegging on that scale. So move it up to the 500 scale, and 320 microwatt per hour. This unit here is the radon water aeration system. Turn off the sound. This is a water softener which removes radium. Got some levels in it. Around 220. This tank here is an anion exchange resin. Removes the uranium and the arsenic. And it's reading around 150. This is a neutralizer because this anion exchange resin reduces the pH, brings the pH back up. And that one is not very radioactive at all. Any questions?
So, there you go with the radioactive tanks, just to be aware. You know, without the meter, I walk in there and I'm perfectly happy standing next to those tanks. So with all the contaminants I'm talking about, you know, we can't see, taste, or smell them, so you need to monitor. Even if once you put treatment in, you need to take a sample once a year. They only work so long. The sample should be taken under stress conditions. If you just turn the water on at 1 gallon per minute and take a sample, maybe it's going to be fine. You need to test the water at stress conditions. So like, let's say someone's taking a shower and someone's washing dishes. So the faster the water goes through the tanks, the harder it is for the treatment media to catch all of these elements. And they should all be, all these water treatment systems should be maintained by a water treatment professional. We have guidance. Here's some guidance on the radioactivity, one for North Jersey, one for South Jersey. And my take-home messages, New Jersey, I think, leads the nation in private well testing via our Private Well Testing Act. But it's still not enough. Only 37% of our wells have been tested by it. This leaves 250,000 wells, call it 750,000 people. We need to use innovative methods to reach out to people. They may not sell the house for 30 or 40 years. We need to get health departments to try more of these innovative outreach methods, and effective water treatment is available. And like I said in the beginning, you don't need to be next door to DuPont's hazardous waste landfill to have a contaminated well. I'm just the presenter here. I've collaborated with dozens of people from New Jersey Department of Health, also our DEP Science and Research. These are all people who work with me in the Geological Survey, our Bureau of Environmental Radiation, people at Columbia University, and I learned all about radioactivity in well water from Zoltan Szabo at the U.S. Geological Survey. And with that, I'll take questions.
You have some online questions? A couple online, yeah. First one is from David Harvey. What do you believe was the primary driver in getting the New Jersey private well testing law? Does the state or other organizations support the cost of homeowner testing and results interpretation for homeowners? Is there any support for the cost to install and operate treatment?
Okay, that's several questions there. So I think the driving force, we're very old industrialized state. We have the highest number of Superfund sites. We have a lot of contamination in public wells and private wells. And it was just, you know, citizens lobbying the legislature to get testing. That's how it came to pass. The cost is borne by either the buyer or the seller for the testing. And the test right now, we've been adding some additional contaminants. Next coming is going to be PFAS, some PFAS contaminants. The test right now is around $600, but you're selling the house, so $600 is generally a small piece of the whole puzzle when selling the house. There is 0% interest loans for water treatment, up to $10,000 to either, let's say, so you test and you find out I've got arsenic, boron, and radiation in my water. Well, the first thing you want to do, is there public water nearby that you could connect to city water? If not, then you could, if you don't have the money, you could borrow the money at 0% to buy the water treatment. I think that covered that question.
Can I ask a related question? Would it be possible in some of these more affected areas to have a public water system for those? Would it, at the end, down the road, would it be better for some of the communities that are very affected?
So the question is, would a public water system in some of these areas be helpful? Yes, it would be. However, most of these areas where we're finding the problems with private wells are more rural, and the homes are far apart. Often they're either on 1 acre lots or maybe even 5-10 acre lots. So the homes are far and few between. In North Jersey, it's bedrock, and extending the public water lines is very expensive. Some cases they have to blast, and I forget what the price is off the top of my head, but it's extremely expensive to run water lines. So down the road, hopefully, it'll be expanded.
There was a,
I'm sorry, to like build off of that, are there facilities so that residents could kind of haul their own water to their own, could go to city water systems, fill up tanks that they carry in their trucks and bring to their own house? I'm from a rural place in Colorado, that's how we do water, because we also don't have city, we're not connected to city water, so you literally, there's like a station, you can go pay for the water, fill it up, and bring it to your own house.
I don't know anyone who's doing that. I'm sure it could be done. Maybe, where are you going to put the tank? Maybe you can put it in the basement. I had one guy, there was one guy who had, he had 2 wells, they both went dry. So that's why he hauled water in. But he didn't have a basement, and during the winter it was going to freeze. So I haven't heard anyone doing that. So it's just not, maybe it's a thing. I know in the West it's a thing, but in Jersey now.
do vendors have to be certified in the state to sell and install the water treatment units?
This is a huge problem in New Jersey. Water treatment is completely unregulated. So if any of you want to get in the water treatment business, you can start tomorrow. I trained you, you're ready to go. And you may be trained much more than some of the people who are doing it. There's a national certification by the Water Quality Association, and people should try, these vendors can take a test with the Water Quality Association and get certified. So we would recommend, use one of those vendors if you can. And hopefully at some point we'll get licensing for water treatment. Picture this, you want to drill a well, you need a well permit to drill the well. You need a licensed well driller. You need a licensed pump installer. The person who collects the water sample has to be certified. The lab is certified. So everything is certified and licensed up until now. I need to take the poison out of my water, and anyone can do it. So obviously there's an issue there. Good question.
So I noticed, I think, I couldn't see a lot of the details, but I think your arsenic maps were all based on percentage of wells that failed, but it didn't talk about the actual levels. I mean, if it was 6 ppb, it would have failed. So what were the ranges?
So you're right. So if it's above 5, it's failing. They range in New Jersey up to 400 micrograms per liter. Most of them are below 50.
50 used to be the standard.
Yeah, and most are below 50.
Where does the arsenic come from?
The arsenic, well, I showed the pyrite crystals, so that's probably the main source in our black shales and even up into our highlands where we have some geologic formations with the sulfides.
I moved to Florida from Michigan, where we had the Marshall sandstone that was just leaching all the arsenic out into the wells.
Yeah, so it's our Newark Basin. Any geologist listening would know what I'm talking about. It's a Mesozoic age. It was an old lake that filled in with sediments. The same basin has the boron. The lake would occasionally dry out in geologic time and would leave evaporites, and hence your borax, and water with high boron and sodium borate.
So the closer you are to the source, the higher, well, water levels.
It varies dramatically because this is fractured rock, so it depends where the cracks are. All the geologic formations are dipping, so over in one spot, the shallow zone may be the bad zone, and then across the street, it's the deep zone because of the dipping beds. So it's very difficult to pinpoint. You can't say, oh, shallow is bad or deep is bad. It all depends.
Just a comment about the politics of getting well testing done. We've worked in the state of Maine, where there's an arsenic problem, and I went and testified before the state Senate when there was a bill before the Senate to mimic what New Jersey has done, and the bill passed, and the governor vetoed it, and then a modified bill eventually was passed. The governor vetoed it, but the state Senate overrode the veto. Going back to New Jersey, the New Jersey Well Testing Act was passed after Jim McGreevey stepped down as governor, when there were a series of interim governors. The governor who passed that act was governor for 5 days. And somebody put this bill before him, because that seems like a good idea. So there's a little luck involved.
We were very lucky for that 5-day period, because certainly a great public health law that was passed.
A couple more online questions. Ken Yang up at Lamont wants to know, for the project with the 376 homes, was that published? The samples that were collected from the 376?
That was the school study.
Yeah.
The question is, was it published? We have a paper out there, was accepted, but we don't have a date yet. It's going to be in the Journal of Environmental Health.
And then another question from Kantoshi. First, is the granular activated carbon effective for radium removal? And second, if so, how to treat the produced solid waste?
The question
is granular activated carbon absorbed? Does it absorb them?
So the granular activated carbon is not a treatment for gross alpha. It doesn't remove radium or uranium. It's a treatment for just radon. And the tanks will get radioactive. And if the tanks are above 50 micro-R per hour, they're not supposed to be transported. If you put one of those hot radioactive tanks in your truck and try to go across the George Washington Bridge, I think the SWAT team is going to be on you. But what you can do is you can when it's time to change the tank, you can set it out of service and wait 7 half-lives, which would be about a month for radon. And then the tank is back to background, and you can then dispose of it. You can then transport it and dispose of it. A lot of the water treatment guys may not be educated on this yet, and they may be driving around with a radioactive tank behind their seat. That's one of the reasons we need the certification of treatment people for their own safety as well. Steve?
So following up on that, that's for the treatment people, but for the, your wonderful example of the home where right next on the other side of the gypsum wall, they're being zapped while they watch TV. Why not have some type of badge or cheap Geiger counter on all these tanks? In Fukushima, they came up with these cheap Geiger counters so that people could know whether they had to leave their neighborhood or not. Couldn't we do the same thing in the tanks? Either have some badge that changes color or some real-time monitor that says, okay, it's time to change your tank or take it offline and let it sit for a month or whatever.
So for those online, the question is, can we get some kind of radiation badge to put it, adjacent to the tanks to tell us when, the media is breaking through or when, it's dangerous for gamma rays in the home? I don't know. That's beyond my area, but it sounds like a good idea. In that same house I had the video on, previous to that time, they had a granular activated carbon tank there, and their radon was 50,000. And the levels were much, much higher. But couldn't get the homeowners really on board. They couldn't see the radiation. They couldn't really get what the issues were. And finally, when I went out there with the micro-R meter, and the homeowner had a home office upstairs, and when right above the granular activated carbon tank. So it shoots out in 360 degrees and goes right through the floor. I set it on his seat, and when he saw it was 3 times what it was outside his house, on his seat, he then all of a sudden got interested in taking care of the water.
But going back to the house that Steve referred to, it seems to me that the cure may be worse than the problem itself. You've created a point source of gamma radiation that is now sitting next to where people work, as opposed to having a little bit of radioactivity in the water.
Well, so Joe's pointing out that the treatment unit for radon is making a point source for gamma rays in the home. And this is the beauty of the aeration system. With the aeration system, air flows through the water, and there's a pipe that takes it to the outside of the house, and there's no radiation accumulation in the home. So that's the benefit of the aeration for radon. And the other, radon is the element that's the most guilty of creating the gamma radiation in the home. The others are, the half-lives are longer and the decays are not that often.
Okay, I think wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.